Okay, so welcome to the Canadian Tactical Officers Association podcast, copcast as we call it. And I'm very fortunate to have a friend of mine and renowned forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Collins, with us today. And the subject is all about COVID today. I really don't have a horse in the race. I don't feel one way or another about it. But what I can tell you is that I find it mentally exhausting. We're 2 years and a bit into this. I wake up with COVID. I go to bed with COVID. It's just constant, ongoing. And I'm thankful that my children are adults because I don't know what parents are doing with kids at home and trying to work from home. Peter, are you seeing an uptick in stress in regard to COVID?
Jim, it's hard to put a finger on. I would say yes, but it's the type of stress that doesn't seem to be translating to things that we thought would happen or that other people thought would happen, like an increase in suicide rate. I personally see more domestic violence cases, more interpersonal violence. The crime rate seems to be going up. The suicide rate, interestingly, the first study I read was over a year ago, and it was the Queensland police in Australia, and they found after the first year of COVID that the suicide rate really had not changed, despite what the myths were in society. And it would appear that at least early data shows that there hasn't been an increase in the suicide rate. Now, that's understandable because in times of crisis, let's say the suicide rate went down in the States after 9/11.
Interesting.
Suicide rate went down during World War II. It seemed like there was a common enemy that people could get together. It was a crisis, certainly.
Right.
What I'm seeing now is, as a forensic psychiatrist and as an operational forensic psychiatrist with the police, is a lot of misinformation, which is being put out there. And it's different than what we've had in the past because people are now swallowing hook, line, and sinker some of the myths about COVID and are becoming, in a sense, radicalized and believing in some of these non-scientific views.
And that would be the internet.
That would be the internet, because what's happening? Social media has created a world where any individual can potentially reach as many people as mainstream media. And so what's happening is that there's been a lack of traditional gatekeeping that one would see in traditional media. And that's why misinformation is spreading farther and faster than true information. And this has been studied. But why are people believing this? There's a number of reasons. First and foremost, there's an unease. It's a new world. And there's, for a variety of factors, a distrust among many people in government and a mistrust in strangely enough, science. This was all new to us. When this started 2 years ago, experts were giving information that they had to change. But they hadn't read the textbook because the textbook hadn't been written yet. So do we wear masks? Do we not wear masks? Because of advances in science, vaccines, which are a miracle in medicine,
Certainly,
were produced very quickly. They were not put on the market or made available without rigorous safety. There's always going to be some side effects,
Of course.
but you're now dealing with people who they're feeling powerless and they're feeling more vulnerable. And those people are more likely at times to endorse conspiracy theories. So there's been these online forums where people um, they start endorsing these theories, and it helps individuals try and cope. But at the same time, it's causing problems because we now have certain subsets of society, and it's on a continuum. You have people who will say, well, it's the principle is that they can't mandate vaccines. Then you have people who think, well, COVID doesn't really exist. And these types of people are ones who, prior to COVID, um, they identified with this parallel growth in denialism. What's denialism? Vaccines cause autism. Well, there's absolutely no scientific proof that's true. The Holocaust never occurred, or it's greatly exaggerated. Now, I find this offensive as a son of a Holocaust survivor. Um, climate change is a myth. Whatever's out there, there's going to be a contrary voice. And individuals, there's a kind of a narcissistic aspect to it as well. It's like, I'm in the know. I really know what's going on. I know that there's tracking devices in these vaccines. And then it becomes even greater that it was invented. It was invented by Jews in order to take over the world in this mythical Zionistic occupational government, Zog. That Bill Gates is behind it. That, it's the same individuals who kind of believe in chemtrails. Those are the vapors that come out of jets, depending, it's condensation.
Yes.
But there are people out there now who feel that it's the government who's actually spreading, um, chemicals in order to make women infertile.
Well, what I
So,
find upsetting about this is it's dividing people. It's this doesn't seem to be any middle ground anymore, where you can disagree with a colleague, a friend, your parents, your spouse, without offending somebody. That's what I find the most disturbing about all of these things. It's just totally dividing people. I've never seen anything like it.
And it's true because, excuse me, I have a cousin who's educated who doesn't believe in vaccines. She says she has side effects. I don't know what side effects she has. I don't know if she's been tested. But because of her not being vaccinated, she still visits her parents. And I've told her parents I don't want them to visit my mother. My mother's
Sure.
92.
Yeah, I can understand
Relatively good health. I have a brother, also a physician, who happens to have battled leukemia. So he has, you know, uh, he's challenged that way in the sense of being immunosuppressed. So people out there who, for their own reason, are not wanting to get vaccinated are doing so because of these, disbeliefs, or not wearing masks because, they can't breathe. And they're becoming more vocal. And I can explain why people in a moment have these thoughts and what the various sort of theories are.
Can I ask you
But
this? Um, I mean, we've grown up in North America with vaccines.
right,
Your children, you have to have a record of it to place them in
right.
schools. It, you know, the polio vaccine, uh, I mean, you name it, we get the vaccines. Why is there so much pushback with the COVID-19 vaccine?
I think some of it is because of the speed. I think some of it is because it's married to other um, conspiracy theories. If you look at conspiracy theories, it's people who believe in one conspiracy theory are likely going to believe in other conspiracy theories. So
That's interesting.
it's a growth industry in that respect. So I'll give you a personal example. As a veteran, I was at the Cenotaph downtown on November 11th, and as I'm leaving the ceremony and I'm going to, because of lockdowns, etc., there was you could still go to a restaurant. So I was heading to meet other veterans on University Avenue, and I'm being yelled at by protesters. And these are not kids, these are people who are my age and likely older. And one woman pointed to my medals. I was wearing my blazer and medals and a beret, and said that in World War II they fought for our freedom and you're a traitor
Wow, that's
when it
harsh.
comes to veterans. Now, I said, look, my father was a veteran, World War II. He had to get vaccinated.
Yes.
As a sort of history buff from World War One, I know that you had to be vaccinated um, when you went overseas with the Canadian Expeditionary Force. Vaccines were first invented in the late 1700s. Dr. Jenner, who realized that if you give people um, a vaccine for smallpox, they're not going to get smallpox. Now, I kind of engaged these people in a little bit of a conversation. I did say, well, yes, you're right. If you look at Dr. Jenner, every single person that he injected or vaccinated back in the 1790s, they're all dead now. Coincidence? I don't think so. That sort of went over their head.
Yes.
One woman said she refuses to wear a mask because it's going to uh, block oxygen from going to her brain. Now, I told her that boat's already sailed,
Yes.
and then I went on my way. But there's also what's known as proportionality bias. If you have a big event, people need a reason, a big reason for it. It can't just be simple. So there have always been viruses. There's been epidemics, pandemics, um, and they keep coming up. The last major one we had started in World War One, and it went through a number of different waves, circling the world.
That'd be the Spanish flu.
Right. Um, Erroneously named the Spanish flu. I don't know
Yes.
why you know
Yes.
why it was named the Spanish flu, because the Spanish the Spanish government, um, Spain was not involved in World War One. Other governments were suppressing what was going on with the pandemic or endemic, um, but the Spanish media was not, and it got mislabeled Spanish flu, whereas it had nothing to do with
Yes.
Spain. But proportionality bias. Let's take an example of Princess Diana. Let's say she there was an explainable cause for her death. She got into a vehicle. That vehicle was driven by a person who was impaired with alcohol. The guy was speeding. They were being chased by photographers, paparazzi, and they got into an accident. Well, that big event, that type of explanation doesn't satisfy people. Hence, there are people out there who feel that MI5, that British intelligence, there would be MI6, I guess, would have killed Princess Diana at the behest of the royal family. So there's an idea that large significant events have to have large significant causes, and that's just not necessarily true. There can be simple things that go on.
Well, it's interesting that you should say that, because obviously the JFK assassination is probably the longest lasting conspiracy theory or controversy that exists.
Oh, absolutely. And the moonwalk as well.
Yeah. But the thing there's a particular documentary that has President Ford on it when he was part of the Warren Commission investigating. Right. And he just comes right out and says Lee Harvey Oswald was a nut. That's the long and the short of it. He got tired, exasperated trying to explain to the people asking the questions. Well, couldn't have been this, couldn't have been that. Is it mafia ties? Is it all of these things? And he just got exasperated, and that was his answer.
Yeah, and for someone who's involved in threat assessment and dealing with extremists and terrorism, it was a large event. November 22nd, 1963. I still remember where I was, long before you were born, Jimmy.
Oh, no, I was around. I was young, but I was around.
Okay. And, but it was a large event and people weren't satisfied. And there was the Warren Commission afterwards. But Lee Harvey Oswald, for all intents and purposes, was a lone actor. Was he a state-sponsored lone actor? There's no evidence of that. But there are still people out there. The moonwalk never happened. Listen, there are people who still believe that the earth is flat.
Yes.
I laugh because apparently at one point the Flat Earth Society on their website said that, encouraged people to join because they have members all over the globe. You have, people who also have cognitive biases. They have what's called attribution biases, where there's a tendency to overestimate factors. Like when an event occurs, people tend to believe that there was some type of internal motive to it as opposed to being happenstance or circumstance. A confirmation bias is when individuals take an event and it has to fit in with what they already believe. And so alternative ideas get downplayed because it doesn't fit with what their underlying belief system is. So it helps individuals cope, but it's a maladaptive coping mechanism, and it can cause harm. In this case, it can cause harm. I mean, what harm does it cause to think that individuals believe that Princess Diana was assassinated? I mean, people can have that belief, but they're not going to hurt society. But when it comes to a medical issue, if you're not getting your kids vaccinated because you think it's going to cause autism, that's a problem. if you're not getting vaccinated, and look at the with the Omicron variant now, it's been proven that people who are vaccinated can get reinfected.
Hmm.
However, the virulence,
Yes.
the impact of being infected, if you've had the two vaccines and the booster shot, has proven that it likely can be managed, and it would be a flu ranging from a bad cold to what some people say would be the worst flu I've ever experienced. But they don't have to be hospitalized.
Right.
A sizable percentage of individuals who now are ending up in intensive care units are people who are unvaccinated, or they had complicating factors,
Sure.
other illnesses, even if they were vaccinated. So some of these beliefs are, in a sense, lethal. Um, Moving forward, you're going to get people who are engaged in legal protests. It's the right of anyone in Canadian society to protest. So you have these truckers who are coming to Ottawa, and the premise is that they're against mandating the vaccine in order to get in or out of the state. So it's affecting their livelihood. Ironically, it's been said that the vast majority, upwards to 80% of truckers, are vaccinated anyway. So some of them are there. I would speculate because it's no one can order me what to do.
Sure.
And if you look at some of these people being interviewed, um, one person said, "Well, I'm not going to have my grandchild have something injected in their vein." Well, first of all, it's not an intravenous um, agent that gets put into you, this intramuscular. But you get other people who have now gone, to use the cliche, jumped on the bandwagon, and it's everything from getting rid of Trudeau to approaching the Governor General to have her make changes, which constitutionally she can't do when it comes to COVID and mandates, etc.
Well, I find it interesting. So we get rid of Trudeau and you put another prime minister in there. The mandates are still going to be there.
But they're also a provincial
Yes, they are
responsibility.
provincially
So
correct.
I mean, it's strange. Um, then you get people with the Nazi flags,
Yes,
and
that's
then you get,
disturbing.
and that's disturbing. You get the alt right. You get the people who are wearing yellow stars of David, the Magen David,
Yeah.
which again is very disturbing because
Yes, it
they're
is.
equating a government rule or dictate or law, or is, those are stronger words, but a mandate, and it's has nothing to do with what people went through with the
Well,
Holocaust.
it's a
So
clear
our
ignorance of history.
ignorance of history, but ironically, you have one day after Holocaust Remembrance Memorial Day
That's correct.
and the fifth year after the mass shooting in the mosque, you know,
Yes.
in Quebec City. So you have all of these people coming forward with what could be interpreted as being, uh, well, what's prejudice, what's racism? In part, it's ignorance. But they're hopping on the bandwagon, and a lot of it is getting misinformation about COVID and lots of other things. How can conspiracy theories or ignorance also do harm? A good example would be the AIDS epidemic in South Africa, when at one point you had the president of South Africa who didn't believe HIV caused AIDS. And it's been estimated that, you know, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people died because of, you know, his misinformation that he was putting forward out into society. So
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there not a vaccine for AIDS?
well, there's treatment
Treatment.
for AIDS.
Okay.
It's now gone from being a potentially fatal um, illness to being a chronic illness.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it was estimated that 300,000 people died because of the lack of public information and preventative measures and treatment programs that were not given to these people based on the known science at the time because of someone's strange idea. The president of Mexico, he back in over a year ago said that, and at that time they had one of the highest rates of COVID infections and COVID deaths. He believed that prayer would protect people from COVID. Well, there's nothing wrong with prayer, but it's not going to obviously um, be able to prevent someone from getting infected as much as a vaccine will be. So,
So,
yeah, it's frustrating. And I think people are exhausted as well. You say you wake up in the morning with COVID. Well, you really meant waking up thinking about COVID.
well, it's again, if you happen to, watch the news, the
Yeah,
first thing is COVID.
right.
And what I find fascinating is I don't hear any statistics about people that contracted COVID and lived. We
Well,
all we hear are statistics about people that are in uh, hospital that have passed away, but there's very few stories that are encouraging to somebody that might have it. I'd rather hear about, you know, somebody that lived through it, had the worst flu they ever had, or whatever the symptoms are, than that there's no way you're going to get through this,
well,
which
no, I
seems to be
think
the media mantra.
that may be the media. I certainly am reading stories about the variant that we have now um, being um, causing less deaths or causing less hospitalizations. But let's put it this way: it's if you're unvaccinated and you get COVID, your chances of becoming more seriously ill and having the long term the sequelae of the illness afterwards. Um, and there are factors that make more people prone to having this, including, you know, more of a viral load when they are ill. But I'm reading, and again, maybe because I'm still adhering to and reading medical and science journals, because, you know, even though I work full time for the police, I'm still a physician, and I like
Yes.
to keep up with the literature. I still work a few shifts a month in an emergency room in Toronto. Um, I'm reading more as to how you can prevent getting ill, and the prevention of getting ill is following public safety suggestions, whether it be not going into crowds, not going into restaurants, not going into. I mean, I'm surprised, frankly, because of all the situations I end up in, either on tactical calls or, you know, as assisting negotiators or at crime scenes, and um, you know, I'm as careful as I can be, but I'm being exposed more to humankind than I would like to.
Right.
Um, but
Well, if it helps
thus
you, I
far,
just came back from the United States, and so far so good. I have to say the airlines were very good. Uh, uh, making sure people are safe, and
Oh, agreed.
It
I
was
I
so.
was I flew down to New York to train NYPD at their hostage negotiation meeting. That's every December. Um, I have some conferences and court dates coming up that I have to go to the States. I'm feeling a little bit easier about going to the States. When the pandemic started, UNODC wanted me to go to Thailand. And they said, yeah, I think it was Thailand. They said, oh, the World Health Organization says it's okay. Well, this was February of 2020, and I wasn't going to go anywhere. And same with South Africa. I was asked to go down to South Africa in November. And I said, no, you guys are having problems. No, we're not. It's all over. And next thing you know, that's where the Omicron variant was first raised its ugly head.
I'm
And we're,
getting the signal to wrap up.
oh no, you said
So,
it was like 2 hours.
oh, no. I'm afraid I've got a couple of more guests to get on.
And I,
But
and your
Peter, I can
producer said I
spend.
could sing as well.
Well, you can, and I can spend hours talking to you. We'll have you back on another time. I'd like to talk to you on the forensic psychiatry side a little bit. I watched the interview with Russell Williams recently, and I found it absolutely fascinating, and I have many questions in regard to that.
I'd be
type of
happy
situation.
to speak to you about that. I'm in one of the books refusing to be interviewed for the book, but then he still speculated, the author, what I did on the case. But it's always great to see you. Mike Quinn says hello, by the way.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he was over yesterday. We
Oh,
wore
very well.
masks, and the dogs
Yeah.
did too. And I'm proud to be a member of the CTOA.
We're happy to have you, sir.
And I'm going to order one of those shirts that you have.
Not a problem.
Okay, my friend. Anyway,
Okay.
Great seeing you. Let's keep in touch.
Okay. Be safe,
Thank
my
you.
friend.
You
Take
be
care.
safe as well. And to
Bye-bye.
everyone else.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Kneel down in the underground where the science fiction starts. Gonna have it all my way, so we're both done playing parts.